All right, so I hadn't really planned on doing this, but the time is working out, and I am going to go to a local yarn store that is near-ish to me. I haven't been to it before, but just today, Crystal over at BOD released the yardage amounts for her shawl-along. So I'm going to go over to Sunshine Weaving and Fiber Arts, which is a local yarn store in Lebanon, Tennessee, which is about 30 to 45 minutes outside of Nashville. That's where I'm going to go. I've never been before, but it just so happens that I'm able to get away from my normal responsibilities today. So yeah, come along. Well, I'm going to have to come back and do a dedicated video to Sunshine Weaving and Fiber Arts. I'm not doing that today because this was really a spur-of-the-moment kind of trip, but I'm including this footage in with my Crystal BOD shawl-along thing. So I met some wonderful people. I'll tell you all about that, and I'll tell you about the yarn. But yeah, Sunshine Weaving and Fiber Arts here in Lebanon, Tennessee, not that far from Nashville. Beautiful little town. And yeah, I look forward to coming back and featuring this more in depth. So I will see you when I get home and show you the yarn that I got. All right, I am back. I did not film inside the store because I had too much fun talking to people who are there. It happens that every Friday, which is the day that I actually went, Friday they just open up the store to anyone that wants to come and work on projects. So there were several people there and I was having really great conversations. Anyway, I could go on, but let me go ahead and show you what I decided to get. You saw me comparing two colorways of this yarn. And this is the one that I went with. Ooh, I don't know that y'all have ever seen me work with a sparkly yarn. So I'm definitely going outside of my comfort zone here. I got 4 of these and they are on sale. I got them for $11.90 a ball. And let's see here. Okay, I'll show you this one and I'll read off this one. It is Barocco Millefiori Light Luxe. It is 50% acrylic, 43% wool, 6% nylon, and 1% other fiber. And it is a 2-weight yarn, 3.5 ounces or 100 grams, 350 yards or 320 meters. So I chose this one, not because it's something that I would normally be gravitating towards, but finally what did it for me was remembering this right here. And when I was looking into the colors here, we have that kind of sunsetty pale orange, that peachy color, some of those dusky purples. That's what finally did it for me to decide on this. So it is a 2-weight yarn, but it is a roving style. And as you look through it, there's going to be all kinds of colors that get to play out. I wanted to go outside of my comfort zone with this one, just because that's something that Crystal kind of always pushes us to do, right? In her tutorials, she says, you can do this. You might think that you can't, but you can. So yes, I got 4 of those. And again, all on sale. So I paid about $50 all told for these, but it does have that wool content in there. So that means it is going to block really nicely. And because I tend to be a tight crocheter, I thought even going with a 2-weight yarn, it should still fit into the category of DK weight, which is what she was asking for. She said 1,200 yards of a DK weight or so should get you there. So this is what I have. I'm really excited for it. I expect that I don't think I'll be able to keep up with the tutorials, but I will try. I'll probably do it like a check-in video here at the beginning, and then halfway through maybe we'll see a progress photo there. But I want to show you how far I've gotten on Crystal's shawl, the first 12 rows. And here is the cake. Here is the hook. And here is the shawl thus far. So a little bit of a better light here, and you can see how the colors are starting to play out. So yes, we have some of that deep, beautiful cobalt blue, almost a navy blue, and going into some of the oranges and some of the pinks. So it is going to be kind of a cacophony of colors, I have to say, but I think the overall effect, the longer we go with it, I think it is going to play out really beautifully. It'll be kind of like a watercolor painting, I think, with some of these darker tones in it. So it is curling up a little bit, but Crystal did warn us about that, so I look forward to getting into the next set of rows, and I will meet back with you then. Oh, size-wise, without stretching it out, this is maybe 6 or 7 inches. So in terms of size, I think it's going to be okay. Again, Crystal's using a size H, a 5mm hook. I'm using a 5.5. So even though I'm using a smaller weight yarn, more of a sport weight yarn, I think it's going to even out okay. And I do have 4 of these in total, so more than enough. Here you can see more of that orange in there. I have more than enough to do a huge shawl, and my hope is this will be kind of a holiday accent. It'll be great to go with a really basic kind of black outfit or kind of a suit dress kind of situation, or maybe some slacks, but it'll be really nice and festive with that sparkle through it and those jewel tones. So yeah, that is that first 12 rows. And again, I'll meet back up with you after the second video is released and I've come down a little bit further. Folks, here is the second week done of the shawl-along. I'm trying to get a really good view of all those colors, because there are so many of them. They just don't show up on film the way I hope that they do sometimes. But yeah, these are actually looking a little bit brighter. They're a little bit actually darker than this in person. But yeah, in terms of seeing some of the texture, I think a little bit of it does kind of fade in just because of the variegation. But to be honest, I'm not really that concerned about it. This is more about creating something that's kind of outside of my comfort zone, from using the sparkly yarn to using the roving style, and even to do even like some of the density of these popcorn stitches. In the past when I've made shawls, I like them to be a little less dense than this, but it will block out. It just eats up a lot of yarn, and so I try to be a little bit more judicious. I like to have things a bit lacier and not as heavy. But I don't think this is going to be very heavy. I think it's still going to be light. Again, it's a 3-weight yarn. No, it's a 2-weight yarn. So yeah, here's where we are at so far. Crystal did just release part 3 today as I'm filming, so I wanted to hurry up and get a little bit of an overview shot of this so I can do the next. All right, different location here just because I'm like, let's just record this process and keep it real. Y'all, I'm having to frog back. I was on the row that is chain one, single crochet, chain one, skip one, single crochet in the 3rd week. I think it was maybe row 31 or 32. And I realized that my chain one, skip one, when I got to the point, it did not end at the same place as Crystal did. And so I went back and I started counting the stitches on my rows to make sure I had even on both sides. And y'all, I'm having to frog back a bunch of rows here. And because this is a roving style, it is hanging up on me. So I'm gonna have to trim a little bit, you know, like cut those little fibers that have kind of wound around themselves. And I think I'm even gonna have to redo all of the double crochet 2 together, chain 2 in between those rows, and start back from there. So I'm a little bit discouraged. I really wanted to make more progress. Crystal released this video on Monday and today is Tuesday, and so I really had tried to motor through it. Like I actually, as much as I enjoyed this process, it's not my main focus. There's other things that I initiated that I'm really enjoying crocheting too, so I'm trying to get this through. So the fact that I have to go back and frog 4, maybe 5 rows is kind of discouraging. So just wanted to check in on that. I'm still doing it with a smile because I still want to complete this project. I still want to try to keep up with time. But yeah, time is the big thing, right? And so tutorials aren't portable the same way that a written pattern is. So I am kind of limited to following along with Crystal when I'm actually having access to a computer or to a phone or something like that. So a little bit disheartening, but it's going to be okay. I just wanted to pop in here though and keep it real as I pull out my scissors and kind of trim down and try to get out that yarn, because again, I have to frog back a couple of rows here. So wish me luck. I'm sure we'll get there, and this time I will just count and take my time and be extra intentional that I don't have to go through this again. So I will see you, hopefully I'll see you when I'm done with the 3rd part of this crochet along. Well, folks, I have caught up. I started the second ball of yarn there. I'm all caught up, and then as of today, Crystal just released the next set of rows. It's like 36 to the next chunk. Anyway, so I did make it in time, even though I did have to frog back. I figured out where I went wrong, and I corrected my errors. And I actually did go ahead and start watching the beginning of Crystal's next video because I noticed that her corners were slightly different on one side from the other on that last row. And so I did watch that first row just to see what she would do, and she figured out a way to correct it with just a few extra little stitches. I think she had maybe missed a chain stitch or something like that. And yeah, but she fixed the discrepancy, which I think is just wonderful. You see here on the back, I think at a couple of points the yarn was either knotted together, and so I just undid the knot and I will sew that in later on. And there's also a place somewhere where my two balls are joined. So a little bit of sewing, but it's not a big deal. I am loving how this is all playing out. Just this kind of kaleidoscope, kind of cacophony of colors, and I think the light right now is really good. You can get a sense of just the jewel box tones of this shawl. So happy with how it's come together. I do have hopes that it will kind of wrap up maybe ahead of local yarn shop day. We shall see. But man, I really feel like, you know, with each row the shawl gets longer and longer, so hopefully I'll be able to keep up. If I don't, it's not that big of a deal, but I actually do plan on going back to the yarn shop where I got this yarn, and I would love to be able to show off to the sweet proprietor how this came about, because I was telling her about this crochet along, and yeah, we'll see if I'll be able to get it done, if all the videos will be done in time. But that's neither here nor there. The main point is part 3 is done. Oh my goodness. All right, on to part 4. Caught up with the shawl along. So here is, in the 40s. I think the last row was 49. So Crystal just dropped the last bit today on April 30th. But yeah, I just wanted to show real quick before I get started on the next little bit. It is super curly, so really a lot of it will have to come out in the blocking. And you can see on the back how many times in that second ball of yarn I had those knots that I picked out, and I'll sew back in just to make it a little bit smoother. But you can see a little bit more of the colors playing out here. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to finishing this up. I think the last set of stitches, the last set of rows is only like 5 or fewer rows, and not that many, we'll see. It should just be the border there, but you can see all the different layers of post stitches, all the different puffs, all the little bits of kind of lace work in there. So really, really beautiful, really interesting, and such a tremendous learning curve for me in a very good way. But yeah, there it is. I'll catch up with you when I am done and ready to block. Well, folks, I did it. I actually finished this shawl. So this is my last little video showing you what we have done here. So I've finished the entirety of the shawl. The only thing that I want to highlight that I did differently was at the very last row, Crystal was saying do a chain of 5 to do a picot. I did a chain of 2 just because I don't really like that long kind of picot look. But other than that, y'all, I'm finished. I only went through
3 of these Millefiori Light. And so these have 350 yards in them, so that times 3. So I did finish under 1,200 yards. I have a whole one of these left, and I'm really excited because the yarn played out so beautifully that I want to use this in other projects. I have about this much left, so maybe 20 yards here. Happy, happy days. Let's see here. The only thing I have left to do now is to weave in all of these ends. All told, I think I only have 6 of these tails that I have to go back and weave in. Those were from knots. So maybe I didn't have quite as many knots as I thought I did, because again, this did take 3 balls. In my second ball of yarn, I must have had a couple of knots, and then in my last ball of yarn, I had a knot as well. And again, I didn't want those to be an issue, so I just undid them, and I'm going to have to weave in here. So that won't take me very long to do. After that, I will block it, and then I will show it off. So yay! I'm really thankful to be done. I'm really thankful to be so close to being done, rather. So let me get that done. I'll get this all blocked, and I will show you the finished result. Final thoughts on this shawl-along. Now, just to be clear, this was the very first time that Crystal has ever done a shawl-along. I'm not sure when you're watching this video, but it's possible that she has done more because it is in the future. But as of May of 2024, this was the first one. So for me, this shawl-along, a lot of it was about stepping outside of my comfort zone. Y'all know I love a good shawl, and a lot of times I prefer actually to do patterns that have been vetted multiple times. One of the features I really enjoy about the Ravelry website is that you can look at patterns and you can see what other people have done with that same pattern. You can look at lots of variations and variabilities. Because this shawl along was happening in real time, I wasn't able to see that. All I saw was Crystal's original design, and then I had already decided to participate even before the original design was shown. So that took me outside of my comfort zone for sure. Another thing that kept me well outside my comfort zone was actually using the hero hook. Now, I know that Crystal loves heroes. Many people do love this style of hook, this vintage hook. This one is made in the USA, but for me, it's actually not my favorite. I like having it around. It's good to have just because there's projects that this would be better for, in my opinion. But I wanted to do something that was outside of my comfort zone again. And so using that hero hook, it was small differences, but just in the way that the end is kind of blunted off, almost like a trapezoid, that felt differently as I was pulling the yarn through loops. So outside my comfort zone with the hook. Another thing outside my comfort zone was the style of yarn that I was using. It's roving style. That's not something I naturally gravitate towards. I will work with it, but it is not my absolute favorite. I really am kind of old school in preferring just a regular plied, twisted together yarn, a double ply or more. So that took me a little bit outside my comfort zone. As well as that, I was using sparkly yarn. And even though the sparkles, the stellina, didn't really come off, they did kind of create an extra texture to the project. Additionally, I was going outside of my comfort zone in the color choices of the yarn. You can see it better in this ball here. Just the prevalence of this kind of peach with the black or that kind of ruby, almost fuchsia red. Those are not colors that I typically work with. Now, they were gorgeous. And again, this yarn was not solidly these colors, but again, we're pushing outside of my standard. I also was going at a much quicker pace than I normally would feel comfortable with because I was trying to really keep up. And even though I had to frog back a couple of times, I surprised myself and was able to keep up. But it came at the expense of some other projects that maybe if I had given myself a little bit of grace to kind of take my time, it would have been a more enjoyable process overall. And again, the thing with crochet is this is not meant to be a stressful thing. It's meant to be a stress relief. So when I find myself in situations where I'm kind of pushing, then it's no longer the peaceful, recharging thing that it's meant to be for me. So having an emphasis on speed also kind of was a challenge for me because I am slow crochet. I don't actually want to rush things. I want to do them in a way that feels refreshing to me. It was also really interesting and it's sometimes even a little bit uncomfortable and stretching for me to follow Crystal along as her creative process unfolded. She is a brilliant designer and has a brilliant mind, especially the way that she has all of these different stitches and multiples memorized. And so she has this wonderful tool belt that she can just pull from in order to create something. Now, this particular shawl, it seemed like she had a form of a plan. She knew kind of how it was eventually going to all end up, but you could see in the shawl-along that she was kind of coming up with it on the fly. She was being creative even as she was filming. So in that sense, it gave me a real insight into kind of how her process works, which is a really beautiful thing. But our minds work very differently, hers and mine. And so to come alongside her creative process and do things her way, very specifically her way, without really modifications up until that very end where I'm like, no, I'm not going to do a 5-chain picot, I'll do a 2-chain picot. Minimal detail where it didn't matter to the rest of the shawl, but it was a challenge for me to follow someone so closely. So I think that's not a bad thing. It's almost like going back into math class where you have to do things in a certain order and a certain way in order to get the result that you're looking for. Like math is incredibly logical, but it requires you to train your brain to go in certain forms and certain patterns in order for things to actually make sense. That's why people kind of struggle with math, in my opinion, because they can't just be creative. They are forcing their brain into a certain path, into a certain way, and they can't just go all over the place because then they will not get the results. So similar to that is this shawl. It's following someone very closely and not really having that wiggle room, not really making it your own. But that's actually a beautiful thing because that's where we stretch and we grow. So in this whole shawl-along, I got a great insight into different ways that stitches can be arranged, different ways that shawls or just crochet projects can come together with a variety of stitches. It was really interesting because it challenged me to try some new forms of stitches that I hadn't before. And again, other things that Crystal seems to really love. She loves a puff stitch or a popcorn stitch. Those are things that I don't naturally gravitate towards. I don't like super thick crochet pieces if I can avoid it. But in this sense, with the weight of the yarn that we used, it was really beautiful. And so it was showing me too to step outside of my norms and my preferences to still create something with a really beautiful effect and something unique. And so you can't really put a price on that learning process. Would I participate in a shawl-along again? Maybe, or maybe not. I'm not sure. Maybe next time. If she does another one, I will wait and see what the pattern is. Maybe I won't try to keep up with it to the same degree that I did this time. But yeah, I overall enjoyed the process. I'm really thankful that I was stretched. There were points of frustration, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. You know, we were made to be overcomers. Our brains have an incredible ability to learn and grow and change. And so in that sense, it was a wonderful thing. I am excited to wear this shawl. I have an event in mind that hopefully I'll get to wear it to. And again, with those jewel tones, those holiday colors, I think it'll be really beautiful. It's not really spring colors, it's kind of darker with that black undertone. But in terms of the intricacy and the stitches kind of showing up, I think it's beautiful. I think it's effective. I love that I used a variegated yarn for it. I wouldn't change that for the world because I think that it gives it some movement and some interest. And so from afar, you get one impression, and then when you come closer up, you get another impression. Overall, thank you, Crystal, for putting in all of this hard work. I hope that you feel that it has paid off. Beautiful shawl. And I can see it is such a labor of love, not only to do the shawl itself, but to share it with us. Share that process from beginning to end, from picking out the yarn to talking up how the design is coming along, to the time it took to film all of that, to put it together in video form, to launch it out into the world, and even then to show the process of blocking. So Crystal, thank you. It may sound cliche to say that we are not worthy of you, but you have the most generous spirit. And so I hope that you know how much you are appreciated and how much our lives are richer because of what you've put out into it. So thank you again, Crystal. Although I'm not really on social media, I do have an email address, I do have an Instagram, but pretty much Instagram and YouTube, this is where we're at. But I am hopeful that I'll get to see some of the other shawls that come about, even if they're posted in other places or things like that. If you did make this shawl, I would love to see it. You could either drop a link to your video or Instagram, or you can Instagram the picture to me, or you can email it to me. I would love to see those just out of my own curiosity. I'm not going to feature them in a video or anything like that, but just for my own self to see how other people have interpreted her challenge, her crochet along, and see all the different ways that that came about. So again, thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you to all of my subscribers, my likers, my commenters, everyone that has been along with me on this YouTube crochet journey. It is such a joy to spend some time with you, and I really do appreciate that you've hung out with me today. If I'm not your cup of tea, thank you so much for listening all the way this long. I really do appreciate you, and I do hope I will see you again soon. Bye.